My name is Stephanie Goebel. I'm one of the Senior Marketing Directors here, and I'll be helping moderate today's session. Thank you all for joining us for the kickoff to our Saba Summer School Series, Unlocking the Power of Your Workforce with Collaborative Learning. So today, we'll also be having a conversation on Twitter, so please feel free to follow us and join the conversation and share your tips and tricks and stories. The hashtag is #SabaSummer. Feel free to continue the conversation online with Twitter, as well as ask us, our panelists, questions through the questions within Break Talk here as well. I'm going to launch another poll to get us started today. So how collaborative is your learning culture right now? You can vote while I introduce our presenters today. So with us today, we have Mark Britt. Mark is the Senior Manager of Programming at the eLearning Guild. Prior to joining the eLearning Guild, he had worked over 15 years designing and supporting formal, informal, and social learning solutions with organizations such as SmartForce, Pearson's Digital Learning, and SUNY Research Foundation, Aspen Dental Management, and Systems Made Simple. His work and writing have been highlighted in the books Revolutionize Learning and Development, Performance and Innovation Strategy for the Information Age, and the Social Learning Handbook. Mark regularly writes on his blog, The Simple Shift, about the use of social media for learning, collaborative networks, and organizational design. Also with us today is Saba's very own Caitlin Bigsby. Caitlin's a Senior Product Marketing Manager with Saba. As a Principal Consultant and Consulting Manager, Caitlin led dozens of Saba implementations and oversaw Saba's Agile implementation methodology. In addition to advising customers on best practices and informal learning, she leveraged the principles and tools available to train and enable the global consulting team. She's an experienced talent management professional with almost 20 years experience with two of the industry's leading software vendors. So I see lots of you are filling out our survey, which is great. Let's see where we ended up. So currently, I think most of you are a little bit. People are encouraged to help out new hires and show them the road towards network. So our learning objectives today. During today's session, oops, sorry, we went over one slide too fast. There we go. Today's session will cover why training is more effective and knowledge retention longer with a collaborative approach to learning, practical tips for introducing social and collaborative learning into your organization, and how to measure the ROI and effectively communicate the business value of collaborative learning strategies to the C-suite. So with that introduction and our learning objectives for today covered, I'm going to pass things over to Caitlin to get us started. Caitlin, are you there? You might be on mute. If you want to go off mute for a sec.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you for joining us. I could see from your votes on the very first question that most of you can already see the power of collaboration and informal learning. You identified that by and large as where you got your most learning from. And we're also seeing here in these poll results coming in that you're ready to start engaging in it. That most of you are in the early phases. We have a couple of early adopters who are out in front, but everybody's getting ready. So we hope that we'll find our presentation useful and give you some tips to continue to grow. So the first, just like to identify, what is the value of collaboration? Why do you want to do this? At Saba, we believe so much in the power of collaboration that we embedded it in our learning platform when we redesigned it quite a few years ago. We were way out in front, but we're such firm believers in it. We use it both internally, and I have a quote up here from our Saba president, and that's one of the most exciting things he found. I hear him talking about it all the time about our own platform, Saba at Work. It's our intranet, it's our training platform for our internal team. It's how we ask each other questions and learn from one another, and where we share our resources. And I know when Phil came on board, it was an excellent way for him to learn the company and learn the players who knew what and where things took place. We also use our learning platform and our collaboration suite with our customers in our customer community. And if you look at these numbers here, I thought they were really interesting. We post all of our self-paced learning and our job aids on our platform, and certainly 51% of our customers found that valuable. But 60% of our people found that what they really liked about our being able to collaborate was with working with other customers and sharing their stories and getting great ideas from one another. So they actually got more value out of collaborating with other Saba customers than they did out of the education tools that we provided, which I thought was fantastic. So we're really strong believers in it, and we use it ourselves. So with that, I'm going to invite Mark to talk about his position. Mark?
Well, thank you, Caitlin. I hope everybody can hear me okay. I want to start off with a quote, and this one is from Gwynne Dwyer. What a great article in 2011 about democracy, and he was really talking about tyranny. And I really made a connection with that regarding hierarchy. Organizations are ultimately designed around communication. In the past, when communicating was much more difficult for growing an organization, there were new models of leadership emerged to help move information quickly and accurately throughout the organization. This is actually very true for traditional learning and development, and that's where this tie-in comes, because all learning traditionally descended from the training department in an organization. But communication today is much easier. Technology, social technology in particular, allows networks to more easily form, and these networks to move information accurately in the organization. So we're seeing a change from what we term a hierarchy to more of a wierarchy with the technology. Social is really at the center or the heart of learning, and that's kind of a bold statement when you think about it, because we traditionally look at learning as being directed by or traditionally directed by individuals in the knowledge areas. But when you look at what I have on the screen right now, you'll notice that there's three elements. There's informal learning, there's social learning, and there's formal learning, and this really follows what they call the 70-20-10 principle of learning. The idea that roughly, and don't get caught up in the numbers, 70% of our learning is informal, about 20% is social, and 10% comes from formal learning, from our courses and classes. But it's our ability to observe, reflect, and engage with others that's an opportunity. So what we find is that social actually serves to inform informal learning opportunities, particularly in and through our work. Social connection points people to new ways of working, finding resources, and making sense of information. This is really enabled when people work out loud when using social tools to share what they're doing and what they know. Social also serves to improve formal learning, the training, the courses, by revealing what new knowledge is actually being applied in the work context. L&D can really take advantage of social tools by monitoring better the effect of their learning initiatives and therefore modifying their training programs from that feedback. For thousands of years, we've been learning through observing, engaging in activities, discussing them with others, and doing internal checks for understanding. These are our elements of learning. Our formal courses, the classes we design in L&D, they can do a really good job of simulating work experiences and providing safe places to practice and to fail. They do not, however, address the other 50% of the learning equation, which is the need to converse, reflect on what has been learned. It's critical that these happen for deepening and validating our understanding. Furthermore, we don't really learn without emotional thought. I love this quote because emotion is so deep within how we learn, how we connect to content. Social technology encourages the emotional element of learning. Think about the challenges, the success, the failures, those aha moments, reflection. They're all desired to be shared, and when they are, it creates opportunities for encouragement, further learning, and altruism. These are all very emotional responses. Feelings you have when you have overcome a challenge. Think about how when you share that experience with others, it reinvigorates that feeling you originally had, the emotion to share and bring it forward. The key thing I wanted to bring up at this point in our conversation today is about implementing social learning. We hear that term a lot, implementing social learning. But the fact is, social just is. People are social. We've been that way for 10,000 plus years. It's always been. It's a mistake to say that we implement social or social learning in our organizations. We, however, augment social learning and social behaviors with technology. Social tools do what tools have always done: work easier, expand capabilities, extend opportunities for sharing, collaboration, and community. So the responsibility then is on encouraging and supporting and enabling people to share more openly what they know and what they need. So, Caitlin, I'm going to turn it to you to talk a little bit about the benefits of collaborative learning.
Great. Thanks, Mark. And we do invite you to ask questions about the presentation as we go, and we'll try to address them. So we have another poll out here for you about what is the attitude towards collaborative technology amongst your senior leadership. We see a great variety in attitudes out there, and we'd love to hear what the thought is at your organization. So there are huge benefits to collaborative learning, obviously, or we wouldn't be having this call and having experts to draw on, but I'd really like to talk about sort of 5 buckets of benefits of collaboration. And again, I want to remind you, as we all saw in that very first poll, informal learning is happening every time you ask your colleague for help, every time you go to Google and answer. That's informal or collaborative learning. You're crowdsourcing your information and learning from the people around you. But when you actually embed collaboration as part of your organization's learning philosophy, you're going to see 5 real benefits. That's increased connection amongst your people. You're going to be able to really get that real-time information when people need it. You're going to get the opportunity to get feedback on what you've got out there and surface information and expertise faster, as well as make learning stick. It becomes a little bit more real. So let's dig into each of those 5 topics a little bit more. So increasing connection, broaden the reach beyond your cube wall and across the globe. I love this. I work for a company that's global. I work at my home office. I have literally no colleagues around me. But when I post a question to our community, it hits everybody around the world. So sometimes my answer is coming from Australia, sometimes my answer is coming from Germany. But I just broaden the reach of who can answer that question for me. And actually what's really surprised me is I started to learn who knew stuff. People I never even would have thought of knew stuff. And I was able to reach out to them in a more targeted way as time went on when I needed their help. The second point, the nature of collaborative tools really encourages participation from everybody, particularly those who might not speak up in live meetings or live classrooms, whether you're an introvert and you just want to have some time to think about your response before speaking. The asynchronous nature of collaboration really allows for that. People for whom English is their second language, and again, they're not that comfortable, it gives them another place to share what their resources and their expertise when they might not have in a classroom or in front of a crowd. And connecting people through their shared experience. Again, the people who are going through the same thing, maybe trying out the new processes. When I was working with our consulting organization with a new implementation methodology, we did the initial training, and then through collaboration, they were able to share their experiences with one another. We were able to refine things based on what they learned. And there's a lot of reaching out to people who are going through the same thing. Ready access to resources. So really, you're creating a repository of information for people to come to when they need to know it. When you cram a bunch of information down people's throat all at once, they're not always going to hold on to it or retain it. When it's going to become meaningful is when they need to use it. So you give them the opportunity to go looking for the answers when they're ready for it. Make material available faster by allowing peers to contribute to one another, whether it's answers or resources that they've used before. You can just post it and upload it. There's no need to go through a big filtering process by formalizing it. And my favorite part, our answers are archived. So a question only really needs to be asked and answered once, and it's there for others people to reference to, add to, again, refine that answer as things change. Big thing is getting information out of the inbox. One of our customers' big goals with introducing a collaborative tool at their organization was to reduce the size they needed for their email. They wanted to get that stuff, to get files and answers and stuff out of email, where they were spending just tons of money every year just storing that stuff where nobody else could access it and getting it onto a shared platform where other people could get to it. Let's take a really quick look at the poll here. So we have some concerns with, there seems to be fairly even split between some senior leadership that's a little bit cautious or maybe not entirely on board, and leadership that is really ready to get going. So that's an interesting balance. It's almost even. All right, giving and getting feedback. Oh, and when you crowdsource contributions, you're putting it out there so other people can provide their feedback. They can rate it. They say, you know what, this was really helpful to me. Or, hey, you're missing this. I posted a resource not too long ago and I missed something. And I got feedback within a couple of hours and I was able to get a new version up and out there right away. So to the second point, in your role as a learning and development manager, you can see what people think of what you're offering. Are they getting value out of it? Do you need to try something different? Is there a hole that you never were even aware of that you could plug and help people improve their development and their performance? You can see the conversation, and again, that's the big advantage of bringing a platform on board and internal, that you can observe the conversation, because informal learning is happening. People are sharing information already. When you bring it into a platform that you can see what's going on, you can see the value of what's out there and what your role might be in supporting that and adding to that value. Surfacing information and expertise faster. I love this one. Like I said, it's you get to see out there who in your organization knows stuff. And you see that when you give them the opportunity to answer some questions or share what they've got. You also have the opportunity as an organization to recognize those experts for their expertise. People always like to be told that they're great at their job and they're a good team player. So you can actually reach out and acknowledge those people who are helping everybody else in your organization be a success. There's a clear ownership of material and knowledge. So when somebody posts something, it's under their name, they're the owner of it. So again, if there are questions or follow-up needed on that particular item, that's easy to trace back to who it is and who should have that. And again, you can tie back the knowledge of who knows what because their name's attached to the answers that they're providing. The second to last point, unfiltered delivery of the message. This is again about the experts giving the answer directly rather than the experts informing the curriculum designer who runs it through an editor who maybe has it all wrapped up, and at one point there's maybe a little bit dilution of the original message. Now you've got the person with the message delivering the message, and it's in its pure state. Increased time to delivery is the last one. If you spot a need, maybe there's going to be a big process change starting on Friday. You don't have to again workshop or go through any great development efforts to get some information up and out there and within reach of your organization. And making learning stick. Traditional learning doesn't always offer the opportunity to practice and reinforce what is learned. There's certainly a place for traditional learning. It's good to take a break from your daily routine, reflect on what you have been doing and what you're learning. But to really reinforce what it is you've learned, you've got to use it. So by offering learning as you go when you need it, you're getting that chance to use it as you're learning it, and that will make it just reinforce that much more. So micro-learning, that's sort of learning in small nuggets. Collaboration is a really good opportunity for that, and it lets you, take in that information as you need it. And users can reference the information as they're going and learning and doing at the same time. So we're going to take a pause here. Are there any questions on what we've talked about so far?
I just checked the questions from the audience and didn't see any come through, so we can use that as a reminder. If anyone does have any questions, feel free to send those through, and we will pause again shortly and check. So I think we'll pass things off to Mark to continue.
Okay, great. The polls are a great way to engage with you all and get some insight. One thing we discovered from the last poll that was given that roughly about 50% are still in that not sure area as far as their executive leadership goes, moving a little bit slowly, tentatively with social technology. So I would like to launch another poll and just talk a little bit more about, what approaches have your organization taken to encourage sharing and collaboration currently. So if we could launch that poll.
It's up and out there, Mark. We've got
Thank you. You're way ahead of me, Stephanie. Thanks.
All set.
Okay, great. So I'll let you guys answer that as we kind of move forward with our conversation today. And I want to talk to you a little bit more about, how do we get this going? How do we have these conversations with not only our peers, our coworkers, the group that we ideally want to leverage the technology in our organizations, but also that leadership that's kind of on the fence, not sure how to understand it. The first thing I want to advocate is that we really need to reframe the discussion that's happening. How do we help these individuals better understand that social is not a negative aspect of learning in our organizations? It's something that happens, and these tools today can obviously augment that happening. It typically, historically, social implies a non-productivity, something outside of the work that's being done, something that's a time waste. Believe it or not, that still is very evident in organizations that we want people working, we don't want them socializing. But as I noted earlier, social is about community, and it's about collaboration, it's about sharing. It's really how work gets done. Social is how we've learned most of what we do and know today. So furthermore, on our social interactions, it helps us build trust and lasting relationships. And we know that trust and relationships are critical for long-term relationships of work. I think, too, that we need to advocate that if you're going to change or lead the social change in your organization, you need to lead it with social. And by what I mean is kind of set the slide decks aside, the formal presentations with your leadership. It's time to have conversations because that reinforces what social is. Engaging in those conversations is a big part of it. And there's some simple questions you might want to employ in your organization to start those discussions. For example, engaging with leaders by asking a question of, how do you continue to grow your knowledge and skills in your leadership role? I'd be very surprised if executives in the C-suite are taking a lot of courses and classes. And another question is, when, like we started with the poll, use that. When you think of the last great thing you learned, where did it happen? A classroom, an e-learning course, or did it happen in the work that you do? The numbers tend to pan out where you find that people are, in fact, learning informally and socially more than they are in the formal classes. And what we need to do is obviously augment those experiences to enhance that. We're not investing enough in that aspect of learning in our organizations. Another thing to bring up with your executive leadership is, and actually your workforce as a whole, is social really is frictionless learning. Right? It brings it closer to the work that we're doing. And this is what organizations want. This is what executives want. This is what individuals want. There's very few people out there saying, I can't wait to take a workshop or a class, especially in their workforce. They're looking, obviously, to learn within the work that they do and draw upon those previous learning experiences. It's a continual process, not something we start and stop again. Learning is really a part of our work, not apart from it. So, what you measure is not only what is gained and applied, like behavior change, but it's often, what's reduced. Time in meetings, time in courses, time answering emails, time finding answers. It's, time away from our work. So ROI is often used and slid in to try and gauge, social success, but it's not really a fit measure for social tool value. And too often we measure only adoption, how many are using a social tool, which sadly is the 21st century version of measuring classroom attendance. What we need to strive for is adaptation. That's the measure we want. How much of our work is being done in the open? How quickly are we finding answers and expertise to solve in the work-related issues? Are we measuring, retention not only of just knowledge, but of our people? People who are socially engaged or engaged in the workforce, who have connections, tend to stay in that organization longer. So I'm looking at the poll results, and you can see them as well, and we find that Some things are already underway, which are great because they can be augmented with social tools. So you've already engaged, 35% are using intranets and email, and now you have a much more robust platform with social technology to leverage. Lunch and learns and similar initiatives, face-to-face, can be extended with social tools. Another factor I'll bring up is that we need to talk about social not in the context of something, like I said before, that we implement, but it's really about building frameworks and not having these formulas around it. Social tools rarely fail. When they're underutilized, it's more a reflection of your culture than it is of the content, I should say. The content not being accurate or relevant. Those are the things to look closer at. It's not necessarily a failure on the social tool part. You cannot and should not dictate the direction that social takes in your organization. This is where frameworks are applied. It's about channeling and encouraging that use and that growth within the tools. So what I have here on the screen, if you haven't recognized it, is it's a tomato plant, and it has its own form of a framework around it. Because we know fully well that in nature, this tomato plant would produce fruit regardless of any type of intervention. But with a framework, it continues to grow. The fruit from the tomato plant is much more stable, it's larger, there tends to be more of it. And the same kind of analogy works when we talk about social, a natural occurrence in our organizations, just needing to be channeled, just needing to be held close in place. Some advice that I'll share with you that's worked for me in the past is to start small and go slow. And it sounds like from the earlier poll, that's something that is your executives are buying into. Your executives are warming up to that idea. And I can't overemphasize it enough. So we need to look carefully and say early on, who are the individuals and leaders, and not just C-suite when we talk about leaders. Talk about leaders in their content areas, leaders in the workforce who really get it. Get them involved. L&D does not need to own social. Nobody really owns social in your organization. You want to have partnerships with the people in your organization. Social tools are really our new places, and when people meet in places like the physical world, they establish norms of behavior. So you want to kind of start with small groups in little pockets, so they begin to use and find different avenues to engage in the social tools, and they really establish the norms of behavior that are there. Rather than having some firm policies in place of how to use social tools, it's really about guidelines. Also, keep in mind that when the gates are open for everyone to use at once, and this is really a mistake sometimes with enterprise social network tools, is there's really no content. Groups are formed and nobody's talking. When new people come aboard, they see a ghost town, and this is not really the most inviting environment of a social place. It's important to note that social forms around an object and not the other way around. So you think about objects, they can be things like a party, a cause you care about, a campaign, a project, or a good way to use a social technology is around a problem. Use social technology to solve problems in the organization. Use it as an added means to talk asynchronously, to come together and to collaborate to an end result, a solution. I'd also point that we need to engage the points of least resistance in our organization. It's not always a top-down driven initiative. Those rarely work. It's much more grassroots when using social technology. And I don't mean least resistance as always being negative, because there are positives. So as a point of least resistance, we can use social technology to eliminate problems. Where are the misunderstood processes in the organization we can begin to talk about? What are the weaker systems in the company that need to be addressed? What are the pain points? What is keeping somebody up at night in their work that they do? On the positive side is I would advocate that you look where collaboration is already healthy. Where are people getting together and connecting really well at the department level, at the project level, even outside of those in communities of interest or communities of practice? Social tools can augment those and extend those conversations, expand that learning. So, where are the real business drivers? And of course, who are those key nodes in the network? Who are those key people are always constantly running to get answers to questions they need? These are the type of people you want to bring into your environment slowly. I'd also point out you want to avoid shiny objects. I attended a conference for social technology in the past, and people go all out releasing all features and functionalities of their platform all at once, and it can be extremely overwhelming. You know, the idea is that simple is kind of the new black. You know, avoid the bloat with social tools. Use some of the features and use them very well. Expand, or, you know, what they say is like, you know, when the wheel squeaks, then add the grease. And that's the same holds true here. We want people at the core to build community, collaboration, and sharing. Other things are on the peripheral. Right now, you want to get them to using those features and functionalities first. All right, this might be slightly disturbing, but social carves its own path. This is one that's hard for executives to understand. And I'll say again that all conversation is really, in business, is the conversation of business. Social tools encourage trust building, but trust is a people behavior. It's one that builds over time and in a variety of ways. It works personally, at a personal level. So be prepared and accepting of non-work related discussions. These are the relationship building ones, the glue that connects people together. The nature of social is not always neat and clean. Social truly does carve its own path in organizations. One of the approaches, and you may have heard of this before, around the kind of almost cliche now about feed, seed, and weed when it comes to social networks. One of the approaches I leveraged in a previous organization, Systems Made Simple, an IT healthcare company I worked with, was much more about planting ground cover. So if you know anything about gardening, if you know anything about landscaping, the idea is to kind of plant ground cover effectively. It's important to place like the seedlings within close proximity to each other. You know, at roughly the same time, so as they grow, they mature together and fill in all the space. So what that really means is finding where healthy collaboration already exists in various pockets in the organization and enhance that experience with the social technology. You know, what teams, departments, divisions are already displaying regular interaction, openness, transparency, and sharing. I'd also say find those projects, those problems, events that are on the horizon where collaboration, community, and sharing would help meet the goal. Additionally, it's important to start with the familiar. You have certain things already existing in your organization for communication. Communities of practice are a common vehicle to bring people together and share and improve their practice. You can augment this with collaborative technology. You know, it's already established, or it's at least in the understanding of leaders, is a way of naturally bridge the social tools, extend and expand learning and performance. The idea is not necessarily to have like a hard rollout with social technology, but rather a concert of these things happening throughout the organization at different points, problems, groups, where they start to mature and grow together and see the benefits.
Right.
So
Thanks,
I'm going to
Mark.
flip it back over to Caitlin to take on a little bit more of the features that Saba offers.
Sure. Before I do that, we have a couple of questions from the audience that I will address. First one is from Mariana about how do you know if you're on the right track for selecting a great provider of micro-learning? So I presume you're talking about a third-party provider for some learning initiatives as opposed to learning that's being sourced by your own organization. Probably the first thing to do, of course, is to look that they're providing learning that's going to meet some needs in your organization and is going to be relevant to the people of your organization. A lot of times that the material people are looking for is those soft skills, you know, presentation, leadership skills, that kind of thing. And there are a lot of providers out there that do that. So the key to finding the one that's going to work best for you is maybe the one that's got the right sort of vibe with your organization and your organizational culture. But beyond that, this is back to crowdsourcing, is bring in a few samples and roll it out and provide a mechanism for feedback and see how it's actually resonating. The alternative to that is to measure performance outcomes. If you're doing a bigger rollout, is this training actually making a difference to those people who took it? Are they implementing the principles that they learned in their day-to-day life? So the follow-up surveys can be really helpful for that, and follow up with the managers. I hope that answered your question. The next question is expand on increased time to delivery when you have a new process that needs to be delivered to a large population. I'm going to draw on my own experience here. As I think I mentioned earlier, I was tasked a couple of years ago with completely redesigning our implementation methodology. And then after I did that, I needed to train a worldwide consulting team quickly and with very little budget to create formal learning. What we started with were, the easy wins right off the bat, some quick FAQs to get out the door so they knew what was coming. So in some cases, that was a discussion of this, hey, guys, this is happening. We did virtual meetings where we could talk back and forth and talk live with some PowerPoints. We made all the resources they were going to be referencing and using day to day live right away. So again, they could take a look at it. They could ask questions before they had to start using it. We did finally culminate after I got those key pieces up and out of the way and in front of everybody. I did finally culminate and put together a formal training course with a test that everybody needed to pass. But by the time we got to that piece with the formal learning, everybody had already been exposed to the material for a couple of weeks in dribs and drabs as I was able to complete it and get it posted. And so they were familiar with it, and it was more of a final review and then a test for our purposes to confirm that everybody had, in fact, consumed the material we needed them to consume. So that's really where we saw the decrease in time to delivery. I didn't need to sit with absolutely everything and finalize all my resources, finalize my training material, finalize my test before I could get it out in front of the worldwide organization. I was able to make things available as I had them, and of course get that feedback as I made it available and roll that into my next session. So I took the questions from my first session and did a follow-up FAQ of all the questions people had asked that I honestly hadn't thought of, and it was good feedback, and it was I realized I had missed a big space, and I really needed to dig into that a little deeper. So it was in some ways a more drawn out rollout, but it also gave everybody else in the field a chance to digest in a more manageable fashion. And I hope that answered your question. Now, as Mark mentioned, I'm going to run through some really tactical ways that you can introduce collaboration. And of course, I'm showcasing the Saba solution, but these are principles I think that you can apply anywhere and with a solution. With the exception of this very first slide, I've also used screenshots that are from live systems, so real discussions that have happened on our site. When I work with a customer who's going live for the first time and they want to dip their toes into collaboration but really don't know where to start, I suggest using a wiki. We call them workspaces in Saba, but it's essentially a wiki page. Wikis are an excellent way to bring some information together. It's just sort of an open form. You can embed some links, embed some videos, sort your information, point people in different directions. It's especially good when you're rolling out a new system for the first time. There's a natural fit to say, hey, welcome to your new LMS or welcome to your new performance suite. Here's some things you might want to know about it. And then get some feedback in the comments below. It's a really natural fit. Gives you don't feel like you're releasing the reins and letting everybody do anything they want to. It's a very controlled step into collaboration and informal. The next option is a complete, the other side of this, which is rewarding that kind of collaboration, whether it's just the person who will always pick up the phone and help you, or the person who does, goes around and sits next to people and helps them, or the person who's always answering the discussions that you already have going on. So an impression awards is a really great way for you to say as an organization, we value this. We value you helping one another and helping our customers. At Saba, one of the things we do every quarter is we tally up all the impressions somebody got for that quarter, and then we put it into a hat and we draw prizes. And so people are both rewarded for having earned impressions, and there's a lot of jostling back and forth, people to say, hey, go make sure you go out and give impressions for the people who've helped you. So we also try to encourage the giving of impressions as well. And it's a really great way to create that culture and get everybody on board. Promoting innovation with ideas. This is basically giving a platform for people to submit their ideas and surface them. We had a customer a few years ago who long had a culture of having, they had ideas of the quarter, they called it. People would email in an idea to their manager, and then the managers would all sit around and look at the ideas, and the best idea for the quarter that, as determined by the managers, would win. Well, when they brought in Saba, they decided to use our idea feature to popularize it. They said the very first idea of the quarter session that they did collaboratively, transparently on their social platform increased participation 4 times over, just that one change. Plus, he said the ideas were so much better because you got the first person to ask an idea, and then people added their thoughts on the idea and refined it, and it was a huge success. We like it for us in our customer community. This is how our customers request enhancements, and again, our product management team is able to not only see the original enhancement, but to see the votes and the stars and the comments of other customers who go, "This is a great idea. It would be even better if." So it really crowdsources innovation, which is fantastic, and again, very, very easy to implement, even if it's a small step of where we want to rename our intranet. Let's have some ideas and some votes. That's a very easy step in. Discussions with experts is probably the most natural fit, and that is to tap a few experts on the shoulder and say, hey, we're going to open a couple of threads on maybe with IT, a place for people to go if they have some questions about your IT systems. And wouldn't it be great if your IT people could just be on board and answer some of those questions? You can have discussions with staff members following a staff meeting and follow up on the notes and the minutes from the meeting. But it just, again, have a couple people ready to answer. That's the way to really keep it vibrant, keep it from being kind of a ghost town. And then you'll start to see that back and forth and create long ongoing threads with a lot of invaluable information that can be referenced. I'm just going to pause for a second. We do have a couple of questions. If these features that I'm talking about are for the cloud. For Saba Cloud, yes, we offer these features in our Saba Cloud product versus our Saba Enterprise product. Our Saba Enterprise product does have a certain level of collaboration, but not all of these features. And then other questions about whether Wiki integrates with formal documentation procedures and standards. It's not there's not embedded controls in the Saba Wiki tool, but you can certainly have policies that govern the tools, the usage and the standard around it to make sure that they're used in the way that falls in line with your own organizational guidelines. Right. So the next item is the frequently requested resources. Again, probably one of the easiest ways that you can leverage collaboration is simply by making available things that people need, things that people ask for. These 2 screenshots here are, again, from our live internal system. We post our policies, our time off policies, our vacation expense policies up and out there every time there's a new version. We just update it. So again, I know who owns the document. I know who to ask questions. If I have a question about the new policy that's out, I can just add it in the discussion, and then I know it'll get back to the person who can get me an answer. I mentioned earlier that I posted a document not too long ago that had an error that was called to my attention, so you can see that in the background there. I posted a new version, thanked everybody for bringing it to my attention. And just above that, that was the same day our email went out, but rather than everybody flooding IT support with when is it going to come back up, what's happening, there was just a couple of quick discussions in our community. Everybody was kept informed, and we were able to centralize and see from what other people were asking and the answers that they were getting. The big one, though, and then probably the one that I think you might, especially those of you that have a leadership that maybe is a little bit leery about the value and worried about introducing collaboration into your organization, I would suggest add collaboration to your formal training initiative. That's a very safe, comfortable, familiar way to do it, but still with a lot of great value add. For example, take those materials that you're training people on and just make them available. If you're training everybody on your new time and expense system, take all those job aids or whatever that you've provided during the formal training and just put them out there so that anybody can come and grab them when they need them. Maybe have some discussions about the training with some SMEs that can offer additional feedback. Perhaps they can't make it to your training session because their schedule doesn't allow for it, but by opening up a discussion with them, you can still have that feedback between students and experts. And just post any of the supporting material. I think a really good example of where collaboration can really kick training up a few notches is by adding it to a new hire curriculum. I think virtually every organization I've ever spoken to has a bundle of training that they make available to their new hires. It's the very first thing that their new hires have to do. If you added a group to your new hire training, think about what you're going to get out of that. You're going to give them a way that they can communicate with each other and to the people that they're going to touch when they first come on board, like HR and IT. You're giving them a safe place that they can ask questions and not feel like the fool. You know, it's expected to ask those questions that maybe everybody else knows, but the new guy doesn't. And you can make available not just the learning material that you're covering, not just, you know, whatever compliance kind of training that you're doing or you know, welcome to our organization, but you can also make, you know, all those forms that new hires need to fill out, or that, you know, how do I submit my time? How do I submit expenses? Just make all of that available in one place. And here's an example of how you could bring some of those resources together. You have some discussions back and forth to people. You can have some experts that they can be connected to. You can have the resources that they want to find. It's a very, very natural fit. And in my experience too, that once you do a little bit of this and people get comfortable with it, all of a sudden you're going to have people going, you know what, I could use this to manage my weekly council meetings, or we're doing a new project over here and I could really make use of a group. It starts to grow very organically once you give people a little taste of what's possible. Do we have any questions about what I've covered so far? I see there's a question about whether this will be available to listen to again, and yes, we will be making recordings available. All right, my final slide on this topic, when I talk to, again, learning and development managers, for some of them, there's a bit of a concern. It's like, what does this mean for me and my career? First of all, you know, formal training is not going away. Compliance training is probably one of the biggest drivers in this business. People need to offer formal training. You need to be able to say, these people took this training on this date and these are the topics that we covered. Not going away. But it is going to expand and it's going to change and it's going to open up. And if you can think of your role in a collaborative learning space as being sort of like a resource curator. So you're going to be soliciting feedback, you're going to be responding to feedback, you're going to be identifying trends, looking for the experts to add and inform the discussions that are going on, looking to pull people in and facilitate participation. Listen, I put that in quotes, but you listen, observe when you observe the conversations that are going on, you'll be able to spot the gaps and spot your successes too. You'll be able to see, you know, back to the earlier question about how do I know I have a good content provider, if you're listening in on the chatter about the people who've taken that course, you're going to get a sense of whether you've got the right one. You'll be able to make valuable information and reference material available as you have it, as maybe because you're developing it, or maybe because you came across it, and really allow and for encouraging communities of practice that maybe are outside of your own jurisdiction, but they can run. They can run on their own, and just with you providing the expertise. There's still a lot of purpose to your role and a lot of great additional value that you can be offering. All right, do we have any questions at this point? No? Okay, Mark, over to you.
Yeah, I think it's a great opportunity to summarize, Caitlin, what we were talking about with everyone, and it is the fact that, you know, L&D must shift. I mean, these tools, this transparency, this growing openness is not going away. It's definitely more of an opportunity for L&D to expand its skills into areas of helping people understand how to build and maintain networks in their organizations and outside their organizations. You know, it's really being that key node in the network, in the company network as it is. This is the key going forward, is how we serve in L&D to connect people to people and connect people to the right resources. And I also want to point out too that what Caitlin mentioned was really critical in terms of the formal learning pieces and getting those out in your social tools so people can use them immediately. But as I noted in the beginning too, it's about getting that formative feedback, if you will, on those materials and the value of those materials, something that in the past wasn't easy to do, and now you have a better opportunity to continue to improve formal learning.
Mark, we have a question. Do you have anything you want to add to the question?
Oh, yeah, let me read it real quick.
So that middle management has this fear of things getting out of hand or on an internal social media, socializing the wrong information, not work-related content, and how do you overcome middle management's fear of social learning?
Yeah, that's a great one, because I've always seen middle management as a key artery for the effects and the impact of social technology. It's really working with them closely and helping them to understand that as they become more active in those social tools, they can help set the tone. It really depends a great deal on the culture of your organization. So if they have fear, then there's more of a control aspect. And they have to allow certain levels of interaction and play to take place in these. We see it all the time in consumerism, consumer social media. It's really about sharing and building relationships. The idea too there that they mentioned about sharing the wrong information. One of the things that's been happening all along is that is happening right now, and social tools at least shed a light on it so it can be addressed. I mean, this happened in a previous organization, around some of our policies in regards to managing one's time on projects. It was misinformation that, until the social tool was present, could not have been corrected. They need to see the positives and how they can use these tools to actually improve some of the things that are already happening right under their noses, but they can't see it.
Yeah, I was going to argue that the transparency of having an embedded social tool is probably the biggest value that you can get, because it's a collaboration is still happening. You don't know, middle managers don't know what emails are getting sent between colleagues that might have misinformation. If you get it out there public, you're much better chance of catching that misinformation. And as for inappropriate behavior, sorry, Mark, inappropriate behavior, I've never once observed it or heard of it in a formal site. People are very cognizant of the fact that their name is attached to everything they post. People think twice.
That's so true, Caitlin. I want to add to that point real quick, and not to drag this too much longer, but I think what happens is, in our previous organization, we never put moderation on, and people get it now. We're 10 years into social tools, and they understand this out there in the outside the organization. I'd also advocate that you think about guidelines in your organization, not policy around social tools. It's really about guidelines that are positive, the ones that state what you can and what you should do to kind of guide them in positive directions using the tool, not necessarily the ones that sound prohibitive of what to do in the social tool.
Yeah, really great point. Thank you. All right, some of you have already noticed that I've opened up the next poll, which is about how do you currently measure success of your training initiatives. I'm going to leave that open while I talk for a little bit. We're going to discuss how to measure success, because as some of you identified, that's one of your barriers to rolling out collaboration, which is how do I show that this is actually worthwhile? And I think we need to think about measuring success. And what I think with formal learning, what formal learning lets you do is it lets you show who attended, what was taught, who passed, and learner satisfaction, usually at the end with what we call smile sheet that goes out. That's very easy to report on. Say, I had 500 people attend training last month, and 60% of them liked it, or 80% of them liked it. But are those metrics really showing you the value of learning and development? What's your real business goal here? I would argue that the business goal isn't who attended and if they liked the class. I really loved my Shakespeare class in university, but I have to say it has not improved my performance at work, except that I can quote Shakespeare periodically. I would say the biggest value of any learning initiative, whether it's a formal course or informal training, is did I get better at my job? Am I more satisfied and engaged with my workforce? Those are valuable metrics. And attendance and smile sheets don't measure that. So when I'm talking about measuring success, I'm actually saying, let's think all of our learning, not just our collaborative learning. So how are we going to do that? How are we going to measure it? Because it's a lot harder to measure that. We can't think of the old ways of doing it. I'd say to start with measuring success, you need to start with your benchmarks. You have to know where you're starting from, and you have to know what it is you want to change. So first point, what behavioral changes are you hoping to see with your training? Are you hoping to see more satisfaction from your customer base when they call into support? Maybe a faster time to resolution for support tickets, bigger sales. Just decide what it is that you're looking to change, and then measure where you are. So again, what are your current close rates? What are your current sales target numbers? If you're looking to improve employee engagement by creating a more cohesive, unified network, what do people think now? What are their feelings? Do people feel like they have the resources they need to do their job successfully? That's a really good question to ask people. Do you know who you need to ask if you have a question? So get a benchmark. That's how you know where you are at. Then did you move the needle? So roll out whether it's your collaboration again or your formal learning. They're two sides of the same coin. After you've rolled it out, measure those benchmarks again, and have you changed? Have you moved the needle at all? I would also suggest that it's not necessarily enough to do a course evaluation with a student, but I'd say 4 months later, let's do an evaluation with their manager. Are they better at their job? Have you seen improvement in your people? And then you can ask your students that as well. If you're looking to see if there's been a change in engagement, just a sense of satisfaction with the organization, let's roll out that same engagement survey again. You can look, and just for overall participation in a collaborative site, are people coming in? Are they coming back? And you can start to see, are people are getting value out of your site? They will come back, and they will continue to view. They will start their discussions because they expect to get an answer. That's also another site of a value that you're providing. All right, so we have a question that I'd like to address, and then I'm going to pass the baton over to Mark. So successful implementation of social learning makes traditional managing people role redundant for supervisors. What have you done to address this? I don't believe that's the case. I don't believe that collaborative learning really makes managers redundant. There's still a lot of day-to-day management and people management and feedback. What I do think is that successful implementation of social learning makes a manager's job easier. They're able to get their people the support they need. If they can't provide the answers, they're better. They know that there's a place for them to go. They can get the feedback on their employee performance. If you're at a place that's using impressions and feedback, you get a better, more holistic picture of your workplace and can address responses. Mark, do you have something to add to that?
Yeah, I do. The key word in there is traditional managing people, and I would say that, there's a shift. Managers really have an opportunity to get back to what managers should be doing, and that's coaching and mentoring their people, not just being task managers and making sure things are done. They'll be able to dip into their networks to be able to get their work done and accomplished, and with things more transparent and open. Managers can now return to what a role they should be doing, and that is growing their people.
Yeah, okay, great. All right, so Mark, you have some slides that you'd like to close us out with, so why don't you take that over?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are here, you're in getting involved with more of social technology and the social experience and how it engages in learning. And one organization I worked with in the past that really changed a lot of the way I thought and did the work that I was doing at Systems Made Simple was the 70-20-10 Forum. And I ask you to kind of explore their site. They have a really robust community. I discovered it about 3 years ago and started really engaging a lot of their resources, their webinars, their podcasts, the various tools they had to really engage this conversation with the workforce and with leadership. So, again, just let me highlight a few things that you might find at the forum of value. Really kind of talking about 70-20-10, that social component, informal learning, and where formal really sits in the organization. They provide a lot of tools and resources. You don't have to go this alone, and leverage some of these as really practical tools around, checklists and mitigation guides to overcome some of the barriers that are present. Really looking at the performance consulting model that we in L&D are shifting towards, and helping to develop other people's capabilities to help out with this transformation in your organization.
All right. Mark, we also have a couple of questions, too, when you have a chance.
Yeah. Again, I'll just kind of highlight real quick, and then we can finish things up. These are just some samples of what you might see at the forum. Some of the tools, very easy to use, very hands-on. And I encourage you just to take the opportunity to look over their suite of tools and website. But I think the most valuable piece for me was always the community of people making that transformation in their organizations, real people in L&D, looking to encourage increase social and informal learning. Okay, so do we have some questions? Caitlin, do you want to kind of field some of these to start?
Sure. So the question we have, this is relating to it. I talked a few slides ago about, it says, are you implying that improvements in the benchmarks are related to training? Absolutely. Absolutely. If your training program is successful, then you will see improvement. If you're not seeing improvement in your benchmarks and what you are training on or for, then the training is not effective. Because otherwise, why are you doing it? If to maintain the status quo. So that's definitely a thing to look to measure and look for. The other, Mark, did you have anything to add to that?
No, I think that's it. We're talking about how social actually improves and extends training activities, and it really starts with the outcomes, the performance outcomes. Yeah,
for sure. The other comment is that I've seen organizations open a social tool completely and it becomes a new Facebook, overwhelmed by informal activities and not business or learning related. What would you suggest to get them back on track with something that balances the purely social with the business-oriented learning? Do you have any comments on that?
Yeah, I do. If it goes back to a little bit of what I talked about before, it's really kind of re-engaging some of the problems in the organization, some of the projects. It's calling on those key people who are engaged could be project managers, could be C-suite level, and helping them to kind of pull people back into helping the organization with the social tool. Yes, you're going to have that conversation building, and that's an okay thing. But if you're looking for those measurable changes, you want to pull those very vocal people in and around a conversation that's productive to the company's goals.
Great, thank you. So I've just opened our very last poll. I hope you'll check it out. If none of these answers really meet your thoughts, we'd love to hear what you have to say using our hashtag #SabaSummer on some thoughts. We hope that we've inspired you to start having the conversation, maybe start some new initiatives, and really start to explore what collaboration can do for you. So you can follow up with our co-presenter, Mark. Again, thank you so much for joining us, Mark. Great comments and thoughts. So that I hope you inspired you and inspired our audience here.
Thanks, Caitlin. And again, thanks everybody for joining us today. Special thanks for both Mark and Caitlin for sharing their time and their insight with us. So we'll be sharing the recording with all of you in the coming days. So look out for that via email. Feel free to share that with your colleagues as well. And as a reminder, this was just part 1 of our summer series. Part 2, From Push to Pull, a new approach to learning and content curation, is coming up on July 26th. So feel free to register for that if you haven't yet already. And so again, thanks everybody for joining us, and we wish you all a great day.